Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, fiends of all ages, welcome back. I'm Anarchy Ass. We are out at the H. Wallace Caldwell Memorial Bridge, better known locally as the Swinging Bridge. This is something that I get asked about from time to time and felt it deserved a video of its own. It's popped up by circumstance in some of my other endeavors, but let's take a look at it in its own right. This is the infamous Swinging Bridge of Riverside, and despite its name, it is not architecturally a swinging bridge. It is a suspension bridge that dates from the year 1940, and even that is highly misleading because, as we'll see, this structure, while built the first time in 1940, was heavily rebuilt in 2002, and that's what I shouldn't say most, but that's what much of what you're seeing dates from. But it purportedly has this history that goes way beyond that, to the Victorian period of Riverside. And despite popular belief, it really is not a Victorian structure in any way, shape, or form. But there were a series of bridges that existed before this, all of which were called the Swinging Bridge. And while this bridge does bounce a little, it doesn't swing, as some of its predecessors did to some degree. And let's do a little photo comparison of the original Swinging Bridge. This image is from 1869. The wind will leave it alone. You can see this original construction, which apparently swung so much that these legs, if you want to call them that, support rods had to be put in the center of it. You can even hear the noise that this bridge makes when the wind hits it, and it's pretty windy here today. You can see the weighted ends of this bridge in its original incarnation, and this wonderful woman standing on the bridge whose identity, unfortunately, didn't stand the test of time. I have no idea who she is. Quick note to those of you who have film printed photos, take the time to write whoever appears in the photos on the back, because the main reason that old photographs don't survive is because nobody knows who they are. Families even have pictures of ancestors that they just throw away because nobody knows who's depicted. Who are you, Miss Riverside 1869, with your really opulent hat and outfit? She probably wasn't as cool as her clothes, but this shot does afford us this rare glimpse, and it is a rare glimpse. This is really the only picture I have of the 1860s version of the Swinging Bridge, the very first. This bridge was constructed, as was its descendants, to connect Riverside with an area that is known as Riverside Lawn. It is an unincorporated area between Riverside and Lyons that was never fully developed. It was supposed to have been part of the original design of Riverside, but the Riverside Improvement Company ran out of money. in the close of the 19th century and never fully developed it, and it was never brought into Riverside politically. (1869), present day. There have been numerous times in this bridge's history when the water level has been so high that it's actually scraped the bottom of the bridge. Towards the end of the 19th century, that bridge was built upon and maybe even completely rebuilt to allow more safety from people falling in the river, especially at night. This was all completely unlit. And if we step over here, I want to do a little photo comparison of that, because this next photo I'm going to show you is from the 1890s, about 30 years after the photo that we previously viewed. And this is how the swinging bridge looks today when you are on the Riverside end of it. This is what it looked like in the 1890s. Circa 1899, so around the turn of the century. 1899, present day. Let's take another look at this 1899 photo. You can see how this has these guardrails that had previously not existed, and look at how some of the planks are just laid down and nailed haphazardly. And they are those lovely 19th century planks that are not a standard size and don't even seem to match each other. Look at this one right here by my thumb. Just really, was that just made randomly? If we can take a look at these gentlemen on the bridge, these look like youths. There's 3 of them, all dressed very similarly in knickers. Knickers were popular. People think of them as a 17th century clothing item, but they were popular especially among younger kids all the way through the 19th century and even into the early 20th century. Look at this gentleman in the distance. He's a little more well-dressed with a overcoat and talking to somebody. Seems to have a derby on. And 3 women behind him, all dressed in white dresses with hats. And I want to say this was taken in the summertime, not only because of their attire, but because of the leaves on the trees. And listen to that bridge. This guy started walking on it. It just started creaking. This bridge, as you can see, had no suspension cables and was a completely different design. But again, in the distance, you can see this weighted end from the original bridge that still survived, even though this apparently didn't really need it. Look at the low river level as compared to today. This big sloping hill on the side that was encompassed by water in later years. The water level of the Des Plaines River rose due to increased population and building on the shores upriver, and there was less ground for the groundwater to go, and it went into the river. It became problematic in later years. I want to do a little photo comparison of the next version of this bridge, which was constructed sometime in the early 20th century, although I really don't have a date for when it was constructed, but it was the bridge that most people in 20th century Riverside thought of when they thought of the swinging bridge, and there are scant few photos of it. But if we proceed across, I'll try to line up roughly where this bridge was. I should note, too, that the location of this bridge is not precisely where the earlier bridges were. It's just a little bit west. And by a little bit, I mean like 10 feet west of where the earlier bridges were. And I know this because of a photo of this bridge when it was first built, before its predecessor had been torn down. Both bridges were erect at the same time, briefly, maybe just for one day, but there is a photo of it, and that's how I know this. Also, here's this ramp that you can see how, if I could get a shot of the side, you can see how far down it goes. It's got a stone base, and you can see how this bridge was deliberately elevated to deal with the increased water levels. It just didn't exist in the Victorian era. The river was many feet lower in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then slowly over the course of the 20th century, the water levels rose until it really became a problem in the 21st century. And you can see how there's been recent flooding here. This pathway goes to Riverside Lawn. And this is really muddy, but I do want to get a little, we'll see how close to the actual spot I can get to where the photographer was standing in the next photo I'm going to show you. Deer tracks. Okay, this ground becomes seriously muddy. I'm going to proceed just a little bit further. All right. There's a little bit of a tree in the way, but I keep going. All right, and I'm going to say this was the spot where I'm standing right now. Was once occupied by a different style of shoes, because here is the swinging bridge of Riverside today. Here is how it looked back in 1905. And look at this bridge. This is a completely different design than what I showed you. 1905, present day. $1905. Present day. Look at how this bridge had a ladder right in the middle of the bridge. The reason this was put in was for swimmers. It's almost impossible to fathom now because the Des Plaines River is such a polluted sewage canal, but at the turn of the century, it was a popular swimming spot, and people would come out to this bridge, climb down this ladder, and just jump in. Look also at this rigging of pylons that this bridge is sitting on both sides of the river. Yet it also has suspension cables, so it really does forecast the next bridge that replaces it. Another notable aspect of this photo is this building over here that is no longer there. This is the east wing of the Riverside Hotel. There's a little bit of the Riverside Hotel visible right over here through those trees. This again was taken in the summertime, so trees block a lot of this view of this hotel. But this hotel and this photo of this hotel show that it was still in its entirety in 1905. It was severely burned, and then it was, well, first it was made much smaller. It was remodeled and made into a smaller hotel until it then later burned in the 20th century. But this affords a rare back view of it. Wind's picking up. You can see how now there's no thought of swimming. Also, the water is much closer to the bridge than it was in those days, as is revealed from that pic. But let's see if we can get back. You can see how all this is dead and was recently flooded. Even though it's dry now, it's clearly been underwater in the not too distant past. Deer hoof. Print. There's the base where these suspension cables are anchored. And we're going to return to the Riverside side of this bridge to take a look at the current bridge and its construction. Here's another look at the base leading up to it. And we'll get a little view of the river from the bridge too, which is nice in any season. The spot where this hotel existed is now occupied by the police station as well as a parking lot, and then in the far distance, the Riverside Public Library. There's also this retaining wall that has been put up. It's really a berm to stop flooding into those buildings. None of that existed in Victorian times or in the early 20th century, nor did it have to. There's a water tank, collection tank, connected to the sewer system. You can see how high up this bridge goes, too. It's much taller than its predecessors. And here's the original plaque describing the H. Wallace Caldwell Memorial Bridge, section 071-0101. That dates from 1940. Shortly after this was constructed, as I said, there was a picture taken of it next to its predecessor. And I'm going to step over here so we can do a photo comparison of that, because it's unfortunately not a very high quality photo. But here you can see the edge of the bridge as it goes out over the river. This is what it looked like in 1940. And you can see the old bridge right here by my thumb, right next to the current bridge. And you can see how it is really not in the same spot. And both bridges stood there. I don't know how long, but it was not long. 1940. Present day. 1940. Present day. Let's take another quick look at this 1940 photo. You can see there's snow on the ground, which makes me think that this bridge was completed late in the year, or maybe very early in 1940. I don't know a precise date of when it was dedicated, but there's definitely snow on the ground and on the bridge, both bridges. And if you look over here, you can see some remnants of this old bridge that still exist. If we're going to step forward, look at this. This is the walkway leading up to it, still in the ground, and it's poured concrete. And it's very narrow. It goes right up to where the old bridge walkway was, and that would have been wood. But let's take it as far as we can, which would have been right here. This is where it ends. This is the walkway to the 1905 bridge. And it's kind of blocked off in this photo by this, which is this wall right here. But if we go back, I want to do another photo comparison of the way this bridge looked before it was remodeled. This bridge, as I said, was rebuilt heavily in 2002, and we're going to do another photo comparison of the way it looked for most of its existence, which was from 1940 all the way until 2002. So 62 years. We don't really have to go very far to get a comparison, because this next pic was taken on the bridge. If I go back, this next pic I'm going to show you is from about 1999. And you can see the building in the background and the way the top of the bridge looks now. Present day, 1999. I should say 99, not 90. And you can see how, by my thumb, the sides of the bridge were chain link fences. Chain link was really popular in the mid-20th century, especially the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And extensive use of it really didn't stop until the 1980s and 90s. The wind is really kicking up now, but 1999, present day. This is how the bridge looked for most of its existence. And you can see they changed the color too. It had this blue and white color scheme as opposed to this green and beige that it is now. And even the posts that this chain link is anchored to were slightly different. They were just raw steel. 1999, present day. Proceeding across the bridge back into Riverside. You can see too how this is like a coated, some sort of brown coating that's on this. This was originally blacktop. If you can imagine that. In the 20th century, they just poured blacktop onto the steel. It even has these drainage holes that didn't exist back then. And standing water wasn't an issue with the old bridge, and it was somewhat slippery at times. But if we go back to this plaque and pan up, there's a second plaque, and this describes the rededication of the H. Wallace Caldwell Memorial Bridge in October 2002. And it's really the 2002 bridge that is here now. There's really been no change to it since then. On this side is a plaque that's dedicated to H. Wallace Caldwell himself. This was a plaque more describing him. He was a member of the board of Cook County Commissioners. He's probably only well known for this bridge in this day and age. Born in 1895. I love this Art Deco style plaque. A real hallmark of the 1940s and 30s. But rarely seen today. Way off over here are the suspension cables for this side of the bridge. And they're anchored into this limestone that's capped by flagstone. Flagstone is named as such as it is popularly used in bases for flagpoles. But here we see it here. It's a really heavy, uneven stone that is just chiseled. Incidentally, if you ever see me filming in Riverside, feel free to start shouting. It's always fun. Look at these bolts. These are the original 1940 rigging that they just repainted green. I hope this has been a great insight into the swinging bridge. Thanks to all of you who asked about it. Until next time, I'm Anarchy Ass.